Hello and welcome to Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones you don't like and the ones you do. I'm your host, Kel McCall. Today I'm joined by Garrett Farah, and we're reviewing Justice League: Crisis on Infinite Earths, Part 1.
We've got The Flash, played by Matt Bomer, Jensen Ackles, playing Batman, Darren Criss, voicing Superman, Jonathan Adams, voicing the Monitor, and Ashley Lathrop, voicing Iris West.
We're going to go ahead and start with some general, spoiler-free thoughts on the movie. The DC animated films tend to be pretty good. I remember when Flashpoint came out years ago, and I watched some of the other DCU content, Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin. I used to be into that stuff back in the day, so when I saw DC Animation doing Crisis on Infinite Earths, I immediately thought, oh, this would be really cool to review. It's the #1 film on Max right now, and I can say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is a fun retelling of a classic comic book, I'll say. This is definitely better than that crap the CW gave us a couple years ago. Like, I instantly like this Monitor who comes down and is like, I'm from the oldest race in the universe and we are the first to find out about the multiverse. And that's kind of the hook at the end of the film that sets up the next two sequels. And I'm fairly excited for those.
Yeah, same. I think this movie did a good job setting up for those two. I think it went pretty online with the original story of Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's told in a very interesting way, but by the end of the film, I think it's going to be a strong setup to punch into the middle section of the story.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say before we go into spoilers, and I'll piggyback off of what you just said, this is told in an interesting way. We get this throughout Barry Allen's memories, and he's just kind of being sent from, his consciousness is being sent from memory and to memory in his lifetime. At times it's hard to follow, especially in the beginning when you still haven't really figured out how we're being told this information. I'm like, alright, where are we at now? What's happened? What hasn't happened to this point?
You gotta find out that Barry's experiencing this all kind of at the same time we are. Barry doesn't really know exactly when he is or where he is, but he kind of has to just play along with it and follow it. And so it is kind of fun seeing your character kind of play with the audience in that we kind of know what's going on, but at the same time we're left with a lot of questions.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and branch off from the spoilers, get into the plot some. Another kind of general thing I have to say, though, is I love Jensen Ackles' Batman here. He just tends to give a strong performance. I'm not somebody rooting for him to play Batman in live action, but I was like thoroughly impressed by this. He's a strong co-lead to Barry Allen's Flash.
Oh yeah, I agree. His kind of subplot more toward the end of the film was fun. I liked seeing the back and forth with like, oh man, like you're from this time that's kind of earlier in your career. Now meet the children of yours from a Batman who's dead.
Your adopted child and your real child, Helena Wayne with Selena Kyle. And I love how he asks before he's told, is Selena the mother? I feel like this is going to be a heavy thought on this Batman after Crisis, because we meet Dick Grayson, who is yet to be trained as Robin. This is going to inspire him to train Dick, and this is also probably going to inspire him to get with Selena Kyle.
To kind of act on those feelings that I'm sure he's already thinking, because it didn't take him long to be like, oh, you're Selena. It's like, I guess that happened. We see that Bruce isn't really sure if they're going to go through with their plan, and he calls them up. You're kind of inferred that he's going to say something along the lines of like, oh, I'm sorry I never got to properly meet you. And it does make for a sweet moment, but I'm excited to see where that plot develops in the sequels.
Dude, I'm excited to see where his Batman goes throughout the sequels. That'll definitely be cool. Another fun dynamic you have is Barry and Iris. Throughout this, you kind of have what we think is like our timeline Barry kind of getting ready to marry Iris, and he kind of knows that, I don't really know what's going to go down, but on our wedding night, every single time something goes down and the Harbinger comes, once we get there, and she's like, okay, I've got to take you to the Monitor. He ends up getting like the dance with Iris, and then obviously he's taken. Their relationship is kind of one of the things that is anchored down throughout. You get old Barry, who's been running to kind of power this machine for probably his whole life.
Oh, yeah.
And you see that Iris was old right there with him, helping him hook it up at the end.
Yeah, and I think it stems well because you've kind of got this intro to the film of when they first meet and he asks her out on the first date, and then you've kind of got the middle point, which is their wedding, and it goes straight through what seems to be Iris passing away of old age.
I mean, she ends her life with him, which is really sweet in the film.
Yes, of course, but they do keep talking like, well, hold on, this is temporary, so it seems there's more to it.
Right. We may be getting our Barry back and into his normal life soon enough. I mean, it'll be changed, obviously, but...
The film kind of ends on a note that Barry ends up knowing a little more than maybe the audience has been told so far.
One of my highlights of the film is when the Harbinger brings Barry to his dome between universes, I guess.
Rock of Eternity, and it's the place in between all the worlds, kind of the hub.
Yeah, so we're taken there, and we meet the coolest freaking heroes. Obviously, we have the Batman, the Barry we've been following, the Superman we've been following, a variant Superman, we find another Wonder Woman. You're meeting pretty much all these heroes from different universes, but they're the heroes we know and love. I love Amazing Man pretty much puts together, okay, you've got some of the biggest brains, muscles, and speed between all these universes. We might actually be able to put something together here to save the universe, because the whole plot of this film is that worlds are colliding and there is a force field destroying Earths in the multiverse.
While this does follow along a little more concisely, I feel like in the original comic printing, you do have, I think it was specifically 5 Earths. So you had the Prime Earth, Earth 1, Alexander Luthor from Earth 3 that we'll touch on here in a minute, Earth 2, and then I think Earth X. And they don't really talk about it specifically, how many Earths we're dealing with here, but we do kind of see that a lot of them are from Earth Prime, or Earth 1, which is where our protagonists live. They also mention like, oh, we have Earth X with the Nazis that Barry's definitely been to. We also have the Atlantis Earth.
The Atlantis Earth, that's the Aquaman that we get at the Rock of Eternity. And he's like, yeah, due to the land dwellers, our whole entire Earth is pretty much just water. So it's like, okay, yeah, we definitely got the strongest Aquaman.
Yeah, definitely one that's ready for a fight.
Yeah,
like,
no,
he's definitely been fighting.
He's probably just been sitting there waiting for one at this point.
Yeah, but what I really liked about the movie that I feel like was pretty spot on, and that, I mean, I've just always loved in comics, is Earth 3. We get to see the Crime Syndicate and Johnny Quick, Ultraman.
Owlman.
Oh, yeah, Owlman. I wish we would see more from Owlman, but he has his big moments in other plots, so I'm not too upset about it, but great character.
My favorite kind of thing about this plot is Johnny Quick, because you first see him, and I'm not too familiar on Earth 3 lore, so I'm like, I don't really know who this is. But I love his ending. They're running from the force field, and when Barry arrives on this Earth, Johnny Quick's speed is cut in half, and so is Barry's, so they're kind of sharing the speed force, and neither of them are really fast enough to leave this time or world. So once pretty much the force field kills Johnny Quick, Barry's fast enough to leave the Earth 3 that's being demolished, and this ends up being kind of just this sad but really cool scene.
Yeah, I mean, from Johnny's introduction, he's just like, oh man, we're the Crime Syndicate, like, I don't know, it's fun, we're the government or something.
Yeah.
And he has a very different vibe from the rest of the Syndicate who are
when Flash shows up, people are afraid of him.
Yeah. And so you're not really sure what to think of him, but he is just kind of a fun guy in comparison to the rest of the League. Or Syndicate. But he does have this moment where he's like, this guy's already faster than I am.
He's a pretty damn dumb speedster. Like, you can tell he hasn't explored much into the speed force.
No, like, he understands it, but he doesn't know it. And,
right.
Yeah, so when he ends up also dying like the rest of the Syndicate to the antimatter wall, they allude that this is kind of the moment that Barry kicks off through the way the story is told of him jumping through. He mentions at one point to Iris that after he gained all of that speed force, he was able to phase through the different worlds and get back. And that's kind of what kicks off the back end of your plot.
There's no resolution here.
No.
So, it's one of those things where when you watch this, you've got to sell out for parts 2 and 3, because like Barry's plot that you were just talking about obviously isn't over yet. I'm excited to see where some of this stuff goes, and we've been following the comic book pretty tight, but there are just a couple minor things. So I'm excited to see what else is kind of shaken up, because this is an older story, so it's awesome to see on screen, but I don't mind some of it being shaken up some.
Oh yeah, no.
I think our roster of heroes that are there are already a little shaken up.
Yeah, no, because, I mean, there are definitely some characters that I know were big during, like, Superboy Prime, Supergirl from that era, I believe. I'm not really entirely certain if she's different or not, but I do know that she has the ties to the future, so I'm assuming it's probably some variation of the original. But we do have some characters that they set up and don't really touch on yet that we know are going to be big going forward. We've got characters like Dr. Light, Psycho Pirate, and his whole, like, inclusion. Very subtly referenced, but we'll see more of that going into the next. Just got a really strong set of your main leaguers, on top of some other great minds and characters like Ted Cord, Mr. Terrific.
Swamp Thing's back there.
Yeah, we've got Swamp
Hawk
Thing.
and Dove.
Yeah, like you've just got this whole full league at a time when the movie kind of sets you up to feel like the beginning of the league. And it feels very fulfilling just to see everybody there kind of working together.
True, because earlier in the film you kind of see the memories of them forming the Justice League, and now they're on the Rock of Eternity with the biggest, baddest, strongest Justice League there ever was. So that is a super fulfilling moment that I really didn't even think about that much.
Yeah.
Part 1 of the film kind of holds the Monitor from you for a while. You don't get to meet him, and then you meet him, and he kind of really fulfilled me by being pretty dang cool. But we're going to see a lot more of the Monitor.
Oh, yeah.
In the rest of the story. It is kind of a pretty good finale for the end of the film to meet him and be proposed his idea. We end up seeing that the machine they come up with works. Old Barry proves that to us. So ultimately, I can't wait to see more of the story. We kind of felt that the animation was a little bland in the film, though.
Thick drawn lines. I didn't feel like it was the most appealing. Mostly on the characters, though. There were a lot of bits throughout the animation that looked very reminiscent of a lot of other DC projects, and it was just nice and kind of that style you see. But the characters were drawn in a very interesting way, especially out of costume. I felt like it just felt a little 2D and not as, like, dynamic as I would have liked for something like this.
Yeah, and I don't know, we were originally saying that Lex Luthor's suit was cool. Kind of look back and it's a little clunky.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of like the movement's a little clunky here. In a world where we see animation that's a whole lot more detailed a lot of the time, like thinking Spider-Verse, X-Men 97, Invincible, where we're seeing just a lot more dynamic action here, and it gets a little just clunky.
Yeah, almost down some bits. You have a lot of shots in that fight with Lex where it's just Lex kind of robot arm shot by an arrow, cut away, and it's just like, there's not really a ton happening here. Like, the action, while I won't say it was bad because it was entertaining, fights and animation are ever improving. I think of things much like Jujutsu Kaisen or One Piece, or just a lot of these with foreign and domestic animation getting so dynamic in their fight scenes. It just felt like they could have done a little bit more for one of their hallmark storylines.
Justice League. This is not only the Justice League, but this is Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah.
This is a story that dates back to 1985 when the original Crisis on Infinite Earths came out, and people loved it. This is a revered DC comic event classic. This is kind of in that era where event comic books were really big, and Marvel's combating it with like the Infinity Gauntlet story, and you just have a really big comic book piece here. In that aspect, I think it fails in a lot of the regards that the CW did.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, man, this is such a big, grand scale story. What are we doing with it?
Right. It's like, you can sit there and tell it to me, sure, but like, when this came out, it was everything in comics. I mean, there hadn't been a story this big or this impactful to anything or anyone.
This interwoven with all these characters written by and created by different people.
Oh, yeah.
I just think to like how many intellectuals put forth the effort to create all the characters and the story that's here with all of these characters' backstories. You would have so many writers credited. And so it's one of those things, it's like, why are we giving this early 2010s animation? Like, I swear, the old films that I watched in high school, Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, the old DCU classics, used to look better than this.
Yeah, I mean, I think of even some other DC projects that are more recent, like Young Justice Season 4 that came out in the last year. Like, great fights, great animation. But
this has nearly like a Young Justice Season 1 and 2 look to it.
Oh, I'd say those even maybe look better.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the characters look better.
Right, and especially just in the state that, I mean, the comics industry, especially in the film department, are in right now, especially regarding DC. Like, if y'all are gonna really push this, especially after the big failure you just had, do it up. Make it look nice.
Yeah, and you know, I don't mean to rag on the people who made this. I'm sure the animators were extremely overworked. Probably didn't have many of the resources that they needed. Maybe they did. I don't know. I'm not working on the movie, but I don't know. I would have liked to see a little bit more here. I think all we have left to do is to score the film.
Yeah.
What would you give this out of 10?
Probably 7.5. I think they did a really good job of pulling the original story onto the screen. With some of the animation, small nitpicking qualms I have, it reduces a little bit, but honestly I thought they did a really good job of pulling it out. I'm just ready to see more.
Yeah, I'm not that far off from you. I'm giving this film a 7. I've got a little animation thing there, but you know, I think that maybe we're in some of these memories for too long, and it really slows down the pace of only an hour and a half long film.
Right.
And at times it feels slow. Mm-hmm. That's really bad. You know, like I think of like the fight with Lex Luthor when they're opening up the Hall of Justice. Mm-hmm. It feels like we are fighting Lex Luthor forever with Amazo. Yeah, Amazo's something we kind of skipped over in this whole review. He has a whole plot in the beginning of the film, which was pretty heartfelt.
Yeah, no, honestly, making Professor Ivo more of a hero character in this iteration, and then having Amazo be this, like, helper to humanity, only for him to, you know, go through his plot with Lex, and then later actually be kind of the help to humanity when he's there with Barry and Iris at the end.
Yeah, no, I really liked his plot. I didn't want to skip over that. This has been Studio Cinema Saturday on Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. We enjoyed watching the movie. As two comic book nerds, you know, I kind of figured we would, and that's why I pitched this in the first place. It's a shorter, fun, animated film. Love to watch a good superhero movie. They're super popular now, and it's almost like a guilty pleasure of mine. We hope you come back and watch Studio Cinema Saturday next time. We also have Television Tuesday, and we have our short films as well. So go check out some of that content. We'll see you there.